Hey, everybody. Welcome to the ReCoop and the Algonauts collaboration. We're doing it again. And today we've got several special guests. We're doing a bit of a roundtable thing. Right, Andrew?
That's
what
correct.
We're doing.
Yep.
Yeah. And the theme is mass adoption. But today we have Abdul from Algoracle, Brian from Choicecoin, and Carter from Webblen. How you guys doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Coop.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
What's
thanks
up?
for having us.
Oh, yeah, of course. And then of course we have Shaman, aka Andrew. No, you're Andrew, aka Shaman, and he's the the guy over there at the Algonauts Discord. All right.
Yep.
So why don't
Also
we
work out
start
Humble
this-
too. Just a quick shout out. So.
Oh yeah, Humble. That little place that is building great things, actually helping Algorand, have mass adoption, right? Making
Exactly.
things easier for people to develop on. But yeah, and you can represent Humble in this conversation, Andrew. I didn't even think
I
about
could.
that.
I don't know if they would want me to, but I'll try my best to make them proud.
They only pay. I feel kind of weird calling you Andrew, by the way. Is it like Andy? Is it Drew?
Definitely not Andy. Definitely not Andy. I only got one person that calls me that, and it's probably a long story. But
he taunts you.
Calls me Drew. Everyone else calls me Andrew. You can call me Shaman.
Okay, let's just go with Shaman then, unless you guys want to call him Andy, and I support that, but maybe he doesn't like that. All right. This is already off to a wonderful start. I can see Abdul is like, what did I do? I moved to Finland and things, and now I'm here.
That's right, you're in Finland. Forgot about that.
All right. So let's get this party started by maybe we'll start with you, Abdul. Just give us a quick introduction, the project you work on, and what you guys are doing over there.
Sure. So we're working with Algoracle, trying to bring off-chain data on-chain, as well as facilitate some off-chain computations for on-chain applications. Very excited. We've been having a lot of tractions in terms of talking to different customers, figuring out what they want, talking to data providers, figuring out what they want, and we're pretty excited to be bringing that to market soon.
Cool. And you're the you created Algoracle, right? You're the what's your title? What do you call yourself?
Yeah, so I call myself CEO, and it's just a byproduct of our organizational structure. We have quite a large team. We're about 14 people. So I did found it, but we got people way smarter than me building it now. So we're very excited about that.
That's awesome. I feel like we spoke. It must have been 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah. One of our earlier interviews.
Yeah, and I don't. If I remember correctly, your team was much smaller then. So you're growing over there at Algoracle.
Yeah, we've been growing pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I think we're obviously going to talk about this later, but this Oracle infrastructure is absolutely critical towards Algorand mass adoption, right?
Yeah. So for real world use cases to begin to applications based on real world use cases to start happening, you need to get that real world data on chain. For that to happen, you need that sort of data highway, if I may, and that's what we're building.
Awesome. All right, we'll get more into that, of course, and then let's move over to Carter. How you doing, Carter from Webblen?
Yeah, no, I'm doing really well. A little intro. My name is Carter Zink. I am the co-founder and CTO of Webblen, and I suppose part of my hubris, I suppose it's the architect of the Webblen network, alongside a lot of really smart people. I'm really excited to kind of explore, further applications of the technology with Algorand, and I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. And then last, but not last, I guess we'll end with our Humble representative. But next is Brian from Choicecoin, a favorite of the ReCoop.
I'm Brian Haney. I'm a creator of Choicecoin. Choicecoin is the largest open source software project on the Algorand blockchain. We have over 33,000 users and 100 developers around the world building DAO infrastructure and voting software. I guess next up, really excited, we have our Vote 3 coming up on Monday, and then the following Monday we'll be holding governance for Yieldly.
Cool. Nice. Okay. And then last but not least, you know, the official spokesman for Humble Swap, Andrew Kotulak, Shaman. Did I say your last name right? I don't know why I
You did
decided
actually,
to try
yeah.
that.
Yep, you
Okay,
got
cool.
it, man. Perfect. So, yep, a couple people may know me. Andrew, I work over at Humble DeFi. So we're an AMM platform. I also am one of the co-founders of Algonauts Official, community hub for Algorand. So thanks for everyone for being here. Carter, I did want to give you actually one opportunity. You didn't really describe what Webblen was. You kind of just introduced yourself. So I do want to just revert back for 1 second there to give you an opportunity to let the viewers know what Webblen does in case they don't already, and then we'll kind of just roll into the conversation.
Yeah, no,
Sweet.
thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, Webblen is, as far as I'm aware, the first social economy. Our goal is to allow people to explore the areas they're in, explore their local community as well as their digital communities around the world. Earn for being engaged and contributing to these communities in the economy, and then spend the Webblen tokens that they earn on local goods and services, as well as everything that comes with a social economy. So, you know, a lot of the stuff that Algoracle and Choice are doing and building, I know there's kind of an overlap between the community aspect and you know, the information and data aspects. So our goal is to kind of build that first the social economy infrastructure for DAOs and communities as a whole to exist in a more sovereign way. That's kind of our whole overarching vision.
Cool. All right. I mean, look, you know, we have somebody building an Oracle. We have voting infrastructure for DAOs and for, you know, for everything. It can be for governments. It's on-chain voting. And then we have, you know, Webblen, which is building community. So there is you know, and tools for helping build communities. And yeah, I know that you guys are so like, you're going to like community by community. I find it really cool and compelling. So there's a lot going with what you guys are building, and I felt like you guys have like a unique perspective on what is needed for just even blockchain in general to find mass adoption. What do you see happening right now that gives you optimism that we actually are headed towards a more, you know, blockchain centric future?
Well, yeah. I'm gonna, or do you want to go, Abdul? Hit it.
I'll let you go ahead, Carter.
Sure. And I guess it kind of overlaps my point too. I think a big thing is tooling. So if you're going to build the Web3 future, you need people to be able to build it. It feels like everywhere I look, you know, today, there is more and more tooling that exists, and it's tending to be easier to build a Web3 product. I'd say that's one of the first things that kind of has to happen. If you want mass adoption, you got to get people to build the things that people adopt, which is why we're kind of in the infrastructure phase of what the Web3 revolution will eventually be. You know, kind of looking back, I think Algoracle is a pretty case in point example on infrastructure.
Yeah, and we've been hearing from projects where they were like, you know, I was going to build on this chain or I was going to build on that chain, but I lack a proper Oracle market overall on the blockchain is actually quite immature, not just on Algorand. So we're hearing people building these novel use cases based on real world, so like supply chain management, you know, tracing that supply chain information, sports, all that kind of stuff. So you know, like Carter said, once you have that tooling, it makes it easier for developers to build what people actually want to use. We're going to start to see that adoption, I think, explode. Back to your question, I think you asked something about is there anything we're seeing right now? I think the fact that, you know, people I never imagined being into crypto are telling me about coins I never heard of is probably a good first sign, at the very least. You know, if they're interested in a coin, it is what it is. That might not have a real use case, but they're in the ecosystem now. They know a bit about blockchain, and sooner or later that coin might go away, but they'll see what rises to the top.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess so I think that one thing that's got me really optimistic is Jack Mallers at the Bitcoin conference announced that Strike was going to be partnering with the Lightning Network to handle payments. So I think probably for mass adoption, the most important thing is going to be payments infrastructure. So like real world situations, right? Like I don't like taking money off of the chain and putting it in my bank 'cause I don't like banks. So like when can I like go to the gas station and scan a QR code to send some algo to pay for my gas at the pump? Or when can I pay for my rent for my apartment with algo? Like the ability to put that infrastructure in place, I think, is going to be the most important thing to lead towards mass adoption.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say I agree with that too. I think one of the areas that needs to see more improvement, I guess, is with the friction with payments right now with crypto, especially. I think once people are using crypto, they don't even know it, just to process payments. That's going to be when we're at mass adoption. So I think creating some of that infrastructure. I know there's a couple projects trying to break into that space right now. I think also too there was one called Six Clovers. I haven't heard much about them in a while. Actually, I emailed them about a week ago, so I'll have to follow up with them just to try to get some more information. But they're doing some sort of payment processing, if I recall correctly. So, we need to find a way to make it. Do you know a little bit about Six Clovers, Coop?
Well, if I remember correctly, I think those were former like execs at PayPal, right?
Yeah. And some other, I think Uber and PayPal, and maybe some other kind of big name companies.
Yeah, that would be awesome, right? Like if I could Uber somewhere with my algo, like that would be huge for mass adoption, right?
Absolutely. And something that you said, Abdul, which I agree with, is that a lot of people enter into this space because of whatever, moonshots, Shiba, Doge, or whatever it is that they find. Yeah, right. That's a lot of people did that. And, some people are still here doing that, but that seems to be kind of, I don't know. It's not as popular as it was. And because people are getting wrecked, really. I mean, that's
right.
Why that's not.
People aren't making millions of dollars overnight this month.
But even then, they figured out how to open up a Coinbase account. They figured out how to navigate that. They are now looking at lists of different coins. Okay, well, now they have access to buying Bitcoin. Something that isn't, a shit coin or whatever you want to call it. But on the other side, did you guys watch the Silvio Macaulay Coin Telegraph interview? Because what he was saying in that is that he believes that this is the year that we're going to see a lot of this speculation kind of die. And we're going to start to see like a lot of real world use case. And, I mean, I like to believe that, man, and I would hope so. Sure. But so what does that look like to you? What does real world use case outside of payments? Because payments are absolutely important. And you have certain things like Flexa, and you have Lightning Network, and you have these guys that are kind of navigating in those worlds. But I think a lot of people are hesitant to spend their crypto a lot of times because they're like, okay, well, it could be worth $1 today, but it might be worth $2 tomorrow, whatever. There's that. But I guess, what do you see as the solutions that blockchain presents?
Yeah, and if I may, I think a big thing that a lot of people today are viewing Web3 and blockchain technology is like a panacea, a cure-all for all of the world's issues. In the same way that in the late 90s, we looked at the internet, where it's going to solve everything. And I think the first thing that needs to be achieved is successful abstracting of the technology into a product that people don't need to know how to use blockchain to use. So we don't expect people to know how to, connect to a server to use Instagram, because you just tap, download, open it up, and then start looking at pictures of your best friends. We don't expect anybody, the average person, to know anything about any technology to use the products at the end. And unfortunately, if we're going to go to, do any sort of decentralized finance or voting on chain, you need to know at least the very basics. You have to have MetaMask, you have to have Algo Signer. So I think the first thing that needs to be figured out is a product that abstracts away anything to do with blockchain. I think the first really successful product, whether it's finance-based or otherwise, is going to be a platform that provides a service, provides a product that nobody knows how it works, but they don't care. It's a product that they use and they enjoy.
Right.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's a great point. There's a lot of like grandiose talk and like on Twitter and in the space, but it does come down to like focusing enough to build the great technology where you have some sort of infrastructure to allow people to use it without having to go through all the difficulty of connecting to their application with their wallet and then going back to their phone and back to the browser. That's a difficult thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And then ultimately, I think necessity, right? When like Carter said, it's going to solve real world problems. For example, once I moved from British Columbia to Ontario, same country, both Canada. But when I tried to get a insurance in Ontario, I had to call 5 different places. They didn't have the right history from British Columbia, and it was a pain. And they ended up quoting me a larger number than somebody who would be living in the province with the same driving history, and that's the same country, just 2 different provinces. Now you have day-by-day insurance, which is going to kind of provide insurance on chain, where data provider or insurance providers can do things on chain without having these information silos. If I ticketing, right, that's another one. Ticketmaster, everybody hates that. There's a lot of backlash against them, scalpers, things like that. You can trace who bought the ticket. You can sell it as an NFT, things like that. And again, once there are those tools that abstract away, and I totally agree with Carter said, once those are abstracted away, it's going to be the most needed apps are going to come to the top first, and then everything will sort of follow.
I think I gotta mention voting too, right? Like, so with Choicecoin, like our goal is to build the world's best voting software, and I think we're doing a really great job of that. Like in the United States, elections, they're decentralized across all of the states. They're all handling their own elections. I mean, there's still states that are handling like punch hole ballots, like people go and like punch their tickets, right? So the fact that we can hold global votes in a secure way with no fraud, I think is really spectacular in terms of like a real world application that can be used to improve the current system. I think a lot of it comes down to like the business aspect and the politics of it. So I think the senator from Wyoming, Cynthia Lummis, has done a phenomenal job of advocating for blockchain development. Because like you'd think, well, the government's spending like $1 billion a year on running these elections, and everybody knows they're just laced with a bunch of fraud, that there would be more demand for solutions to correct that. But the reality is, like, the existing infrastructure around that industry is going to protect itself. I mean, similar to the insurance industry too, right? Like any sort of industry is going to protect itself with regulation. But seeing people like Cynthia Lummis who are really advocating for this change, I think is a great thing.
I agree with that, Brian. And that system that you mentioned, America, is actually sophisticated compared to some parts in the world. There are parts, for example, in Africa where they're trying to do voting. They're trying to make it fair. They're trying to make it transparent and accessible. But it's just the infrastructure simply not there. At the same time, it's because they're probably copying these kind of first world countries and how they do it. But you look at it, like everybody in almost every country has, even the poorest country, everybody today has a mobile phone. Look like a country like Somalia, one of the fastest internets, despite all the problems that they're going through. So maybe it's kind of, we can start with some of these places that are trying to be democracies and trying to implement voting, get it right, because we've seen, for example, countries who've leapfrogged desktop and went straight to mobile. I think that same leapfrog can happen when it comes to voting. Just skip these whole balloting and kind of ticketing systems and go straight to decentralized voting.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think a challenge too, though, across the board, I feel like most people in Web3 realize the potential for something like decentralized voting. I know kind of when I started really, putting my head down and reading and learning about documentation and building my own stuff, how many years ago, I realized, wow, this could solve a lot of issues. But at the same time, there's still a lot of things that need to be figured out. So for like decentralized voting and governance, Sybil resistance is a must. That's not really a choice that you can't bend a little bit on Sybil resistance, because if you bend on that, and for context for those who don't know, Sybil resistance is the idea of I could have multiple phones count for multiple people's votes, even though I own all the phones. So I could count for 3 votes because I can't prove that each person is their own person. This is an issue across most blockchain systems. With voting, it's especially dangerous because if you don't get that right, you're now playing with real social agreements. That's quite honestly one of the most dangerous things if we don't address every potential attack vector. So I think part of that too is making sure that there's solutions in place. And up till this point, we haven't even figured that out yet.
Yeah, I think that's true, right? So I think that there's definitely still work to do to get from like where we're at now in the decentralized space to like the more traditional voting space. And that goes to your point earlier about like creating a system where people are using the technology without even knowing that they're using it. So how do you secure it from the blockchain to the user in that way? But at the same time, I do think that like the ecosystems we see evolving right now, they are real social contracts and they are real use cases. Like just because they're happening in the decentralized part of the internet doesn't mean that they're any less real. I mean, it does really impact people's lives and have real value. I mean, the votes that we're doing do. So I think that we're doing a great job with that. But I think your point is correct, right? Like there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to get from the place where we are now to making this a mass adopted technology.
Yeah, and maybe for some of that we have to figure out decentralized identification for some.
Right. Yeah. Identity is huge.
Yeah, a self-sovereign identity where your identity that you can pass on with, NFTs of your driver's license or whatever it is that proves. I mean, there's that needs to get more sophisticated.
Great. That's a great thing because like people like now you have to give out your social security number for so many different things. If you want to buy a house, if you want to rent an apartment, like if you want to buy insurance, like you got to give out your social security number, and like that's not secure. Anything that's on the internet could be hacked, right? Like with the blockchain, you don't have to expose that private key. So like people aren't going to have to demand that you give that information up. So I think that creates a huge opportunity for identity verification as a real world use case for the blockchain as well. And I can send you a transaction and you know that it's me and then I have that private key, but you don't need to know what it is.
Yeah, state proofs or just zero knowledge proofs in general, not having to know the things that you hold close to you and are important. You just prove that you have them or know them. I think that's actually kind of a focus on our efforts as well. If you're going to build a social economy, you need to make sure every person's a human, the social aspect. So one of our facets we're kind of working towards is alongside Verida out of Australia, they have a digital identity or decentralized ID system where not only can you store kind of credentials, centralized and decentralized, both kind of on the same account, but you have the ability to retain your own information. And so with the help of them, they have a GDPR compliant mechanism to self-custody your own information, your own data.
That's cool.
It's super cool. And it's nuts because then as a decentralized platform, you no longer have to worry about, okay, now we have to have like a SQL database to handle all these queries. Of course, you can try on the blockchain, but they're different use cases and different tools. If you can have the user custody their own data, you can solve issues with decentralized identities. So I think these little steps will eventually kind of fix or, do full circle. Okay, now we can build these new things. And even today, there's things within decentralized identity and eventually mass adoption that maintains decentralization, enables so much new things to exist that even, 3 or 4 years ago was a pipe dream. And I hope this continues.
Yeah. So from what I'm hearing from you guys here is that we're looking at, okay, we need to abstract away all the complication. Like I've heard David Portnoy talk about buying SafeMoon and like trying to figure out how to buy SafeMoon. And now they're telling him that he has to migrate it. And then he lost all his money. And he's like, this is the stupidest shit I've ever done. Like, why did I do this? I told you it was dumb, but my $40,000 is now $150. And they expected me to do all of these things. And I just lost 40 grand. Anyways. So getting rid of all those steps that nobody wants to do. And then for all these really important things that we're, talking about, like voting, for example, is there needs to be a true way of, having an identity that can be tracked. We're going to have to mix some centralized things. Like, we got to prove who we are to vote or, maybe do something else. But but in these ways, there are these solutions out there where I share this with you with an NFT, and then you only get to see that for as long as I allow you to. And then I can pull that NFT, and it's not like I put that in your database. Now, obviously, people can screenshot and do all the things that they do. So then we're back at a problem. But
right click save.
yeah, right click. Yeah. That's the whole thing, right? All right, Andrew, you step in. What do you got? Guide us.
I was just enjoying the conversation, Coop. Every time I have you guys on, I'm always learning a lot here. So, I made a little list of what I think are the issues. We've touched on a little bit of them. I think the ease of use is one of them. I think having more education is also very important. And then the big one, which, I kind of go back and forth with, like, do we really need regulation? We probably do. I think regulation's also on there. I think once everyone gets on the same page and we know the rules of the game, I think that helps.
Well, and if I may too, I'm always conflicted because I hear as a I've been in the space for 2022, almost 5 years, six years almost. I've seen it from anarcho-capitalist Bitcoin only to now we have 4 million tokens and I own every one. This different switch of kind of beliefs has made me go flip-flop back and forth. We need regulation. We don't. I saw this tweet recently. Someone said, one of the few things I support with regards to regulation is something like VC caps and team caps in terms of how the token distribution should go. And I'm like, wow, I actually really agree with that. There needs to be some sort of standard for investor protection, whatever that may look like. At the same time, in order to kind of maintain the ethos that we've had with Web3 as such a decentralized, independent system, to where if the government fell, all of the blockchain infrastructure stays up and it still runs the exact same. It needs to be that robust to where we can't depend on a government to maintain decentralized identities, for example, because then it's not a decentralized identity anymore. So, like, regulatorily speaking, it's fun to think about, I wish this was solved, let's just do regulation. But every single regulatory overreach or regulatory kind of parameter or agreement across the, say, US or world, every single one we do decreases the degree of decentralization because we have to comply with a centralized entity to enforce this regulation. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but it's challenging to juggle.
Yeah, so go ahead, Coop.
No, well, I was going to, and maybe I should have just let this go, but I was going to kind of hone in on decentralization for a second. And because, I mean, that's what you're talking about. And, it feels like in this space, we throw around the word decentralization for oftentimes things that are frankly not decentralized. Like you find out a lot, especially in DeFi. I mean, much of this is centralized and going through a certain person. And how much do you actually think is decentralized in this space, and how important do you think it is? And then if you were going to, follow up on something that Carter said, then you do that as well.
I'm kind of curious to hear your guys' thoughts on that first point.
So I think decentralization is incredibly important because it allows for more opportunity to be created around the world. So like Abdul mentioned the growth in Africa, and that's something that we've seen is just widespread adoption, right? So like widespread adoption across the country because there's people who really need opportunity and we can give it to them with the blockchain, right? You can send payments anywhere in the world instantaneously. So the fact that like we have this space that's not regulated is what allows us to innovate. As far as like the regulation that's currently out there, like on Choicecoin's a governance platform, and we do have our like automated compliance software on our GitHub. It's open source. I have a database of all the regulations surrounding crypto related to US law. I think generally regulation is going to be a bad thing. Typically, regulation is going to benefit people who have a lot of money at the expense of people who don't have a lot of money. So that's not really something I want to see. The other thing is like governments are going to have incentive to want to control things, and they're going to say that it's for the benefit of the people, but typically it's for their own benefit or for the benefit of people that are giving them their contributions for political campaigns. So like I think I don't want the government to come in and say like they want to protect us with regulation, because that's not what regulation does. So if they would just stay away, that'd be great.
What about like decentralized organizations?
We can help them vote. We can help them build better infrastructures and create jobs and opportunities for their constituents, and we're doing that already. So I think that's a great thing. So like blockchain is a good thing, but I think it's going to be better if there isn't like specific regulation around it.
And I do think that you're seeing, I don't want to call it regulation, but more like rules set around how people expect different projects to function and behave. So I think it's almost in a way like a decentralized agreement or a regulation. People like, back years ago, it was complete anarchy in the crypto space, and it still kind of is. But you're starting to see it mature a little bit. You're starting to see people put their, self-govern, really create their own self-regulations that they think would be appropriate. So you might be right. I think that's the first time I've ever argued for regulation. And I think I learned my lesson. I mean, I've always been very kind of anti-regulation.
Well, I will say, in defense of regulation,
careful stepping, you're going to lose all your Twitter followers.
Right?
Yeah, right. That's going to be the clip, right? In defense of Cooper is a whatever. But the point of why people want regulation at this point is, and I felt like, by the way, Brian, you've changed your tune on this. I'm just realizing that in a conversation we had a while ago, you were actually excited about regulation and what.
Yeah, no, I do. Yeah, so like I think it could be a good thing if they do it right, but like I don't think it. I guess from what I've seen, I don't think that it's going to be done right.
Well, right. And what I was going to say about regulation is that it's just the clarity that it gives. And basically it's just giving clarity to the big money guys. And so so they can pour more money into it. But there will be more once there is clarity on how basically the US government is going to regulate crypto. That's going to be a green light for a ton of money, which will make some people rich, which will make a lot of people, those people happy. But the main thing that the point I was going to make, and then I want to, hear from you, Abdul, about this, is one of the more exciting things about what's happening right now. And what I'm most excited about, what we're all experiencing in Algorand for the first time, is a bit of competition in an actual DeFi, space where we can jump in and make money off our money and take out collateralized loans for no fees and like grow our money in these awesome opportunities that only rich people have in the traditional world. Us schmucks, if you're a schmuck like me, I don't know how rich everybody is, but we don't have access to any of these tools in the traditional finance. You can't earn yield. I mean, you can't do any of that. You can buy some stocks. And if you get crazy with buying stocks, they'll shut it down on you like Robinhood did or whatever. So we're constantly being like the boot put on our neck. And DeFi is like, hey man, you can have $1 million or you can have $500. You can get the same yield as the guy with the $1 million. And that's pretty damn exciting. Anyways,
you don't gotta be an accredited investor with what's his name? I don't know. Someone was recently about the stable coins in the US, and I don't know if you guys saw that, but there was a thing about not allowing people basically to get yield off stable coins.
Celsius.
Oh yeah.
Celsius.
That's right. Yeah. So
Abdul, what do you think about all of this?
Yeah. Well, I was just watching Kevin O'Leary's Bitcoin 2022 talk, where he was like, "Get your senator behind this policy so we can all be rich." It was pretty funny, but I don't think there isn't precedent for decentralization. I think, for example, you look at cooperative. I worked in cooperative banking in British Columbia. 40% of people still use a cooperative financial institution, a credit union. And what a cooperative or credit union is. I lived in cooperative housing before. It's a group of people who have come together. For example, Van City, one of the biggest cooperatives in the world, a bank essentially, is we all have this money. Let's put it and let's give ourselves banking services. And the profit at the end of the year will come back to us. This is the first kind of form of decentralization. It allowed people to kind of pull everything together, and all the profits literally go back to the people. You want a mortgage, they can give you a mortgage. And the rules for this were based on what that cooperative wants. So, then that system is wildly successful in parts of Canada, right? Especially underserved cities. So, and then there's like 400 of these financial institutions that are indistinguishable from a bank. So now you take that model and you move it to the blockchain and decentralization. What that means is that contract is written in code instead of in the membership agreement that you signed when you joined that cooperative and you pay those fees. In a cooperative, you pay your $5 to $10 to join. Sometimes it's $200, sometimes it's $1,000. That membership fee allows you the benefit of the group. It's going to probably be something similar in decentralized systems. The policy, the regulation is going to come from the code in the smart contract. What people agree to when they join that system, and that's kind of what I see as regulation. We regulate ourselves essentially, and it's work. I mean, these cooperatives still have to work within the regulatory framework of the government of Canada, but essentially, there's a lot of places in the world right now where regulation is completely broken anyways. And I know we tend to take a United States centric view, but this might be the one place where they might have to end up catching up if they don't kind of take that lead and let it move it. And especially if it's, I think like someone was saying earlier, if it's protected by this core group of people who stand to make money, they might end up kind of a bit behind.
I think that's right. There is precedent for sort of how these decentralized systems can work, but there's also like legal precedent that could be applied to crimes that happen on the blockchain. Like if you're defrauding people on the blockchain, that's Title 18. Like the DOJ can still come after you, right? Like they don't need new laws or new rules to do this. But I think Abdul's point is really keen because it does show that like we've had these decentralized ecosystems of people working together before, and that's worked in the physical world. Like I think it's working even better now in the decentralized world.
And this is really interesting too, because I completely agree with that. And I never really thought about credit unions as a decentralized entity. And it's very, very correct. I think it's also true, and I've heard this statement before, and I'm also kind of curious to hear you guys' thoughts on this. If any entity does not make decentralization as their number one priority, they will inevitably, as time goes on, move slowly toward more and more centralized organization. So unless decentralization is the number one focus of a group of people, they will eventually become centralized. And we've seen this with governments. We've seen this with businesses. And I guess we've also seen it with credit unions. I was a part of a credit union when I first got my bank account, and now they're a bank because they were bought out. And so I guess my thought on this, and I'm curious to hear you guys' thoughts with government regulation, they can try to regulate decentralized entities and decentralized movement of money, but do you think that it is functionally effective given the nature of decentralized organizations? E.g., you say, United States says, decentralized credit unions are illegal because of whatever reason. It won't actually do anything because you can't stop decentralized credit unions from existing, assuming code exists. And what you said, Abdul, code is law.
Right. Well, I'll add to what you're saying. I will say from what I hear from the government here is that, things like Bitcoin and decentralization and open source is, they're kind of like, all right, we're going to leave that alone. And what they're going, is that the impression that you guys are getting as well?
Some of it.
Some of it. Yeah.
Like Bitcoin, you're not going to touch because they know
they're not going to, and they're all rich off Bitcoin. And just kidding, but probably. And then, yeah, right. But I guess what they're going to do is they're going to go after things and call them securities. And they're gonna put that security thing label on it. But I do want to actually address what you're talking about, like this idea that if decentralization isn't the focus, then the tendency is to go more and more centralized, like you said with the credit union. I think that's good, and maybe we'll end this section with just a little bit of like, do you see? And I think I asked this, but maybe I didn't get the answer. Do you see decentralization as the most important, one of the, the most important thing here when you talk about blockchain and cryptocurrency in the space in general?
Yes, for me personally.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, no. I think like in terms of mass adoption, like it's sort of the merging together of these like centralized systems and these decentralized systems. Like that's how you're going to get the most people to use it. But just to go back to the securities thing, like I don't think that cryptocurrencies are securities. I think that that's way far-fetched and they're too far-reaching and saying, because cryptocurrencies, digital assets are totally different. They're not like traditional stock where they're all backed by equity in a company and you're sharing the profits and revenues. Like these are totally different systems. They all have different uses and it's on a case-by-case basis. So I do think that decentralization is critically important to the success and mass adoption of blockchain, but there's a lot more to it than just decentralization.
Of course.
Yeah, I'm a proponent for decentralization. I think we'll have to get there slowly. It may not be something that can happen immediately. I think at the beginning there may be some level of permission, but the goal of permission always has to be to move to an area that's as permissionless as possible.
Right.
And I think it might take time to get there, and it would have to have a lot of people on board.
To kind of go full circle too, I'm sure you guys are somewhat familiar with the blockchain trilemma between scalability, security, and decentralization. And generally, in the past, we've only seen products with two. You can make the argument that Algorand is one of the first ones to break that trilemma issue. But I think it's not unique to layer one blockchain products. I think it also applies to applications. And if you want to kind of swap out scalability with mass adoption, do you think it's possible to have a truly robust, from a securities perspective, decentralized and mass adoptable product that is not like an Algorand, more so like a Webblen or an Algoracle or a Choice? Do you think that's actually possible given the argument of trilemma issues?
I believe that with the amount of computing power in the world today, where everybody has, these powerful computers at home and most of the people are using a fraction of it, it will probably take a bit of an architectural paradigm shift in how we build technologies. But decentralization means opening up our resources to be used. And I think if we can start thinking of the amount of computing power available and building towards it, I think a lot of those issues can actually be solved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of like the data storage and stuff can be solved through decentralization. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, you talked about the trilemma, and we've been going at this, and we've been kind of talking around Algorand, and I feel like we should probably talk about Algorand, maybe even say it right, Algorand. And So, okay, the trilemma. Now, we as the Algorand people, we're all involved with Algorand on some level. I talk about it, but you guys actually work for it on some level. Actually, you have your own projects. I don't know what I'm doing, but it doesn't matter. So the point is that Algorand claims to have solved the trilemma. Now, I think that there are valid arguments, and I don't think we need to jump into them, but people can point at the relay nodes, and they can point to the lack of incentive in the participation nodes, and you can kind of nitpick some of the decentralization, especially with those relay nodes, I think, but they're moving forward with more and more of those, and eventually they won't be permissioned anymore. Okay, so there's a little bit of a hole inside of the decentralization argument, but by and large, much of it is. And so what is it going to take? If you want to talk about that topic, please do. But what is it going to take for, I talk about the bronze medal party for Algorand. What's going to take Algorand to reach the top of the hill? How are we getting to number 3 or number 2 or, number 1? But, what's this journey? What do you guys see is needed? What is Algorand doing right? What does it need to do? Is it just marketing? Just kidding. But yeah.
Yeah, I kind of hit on that, and I'm curious your guys' thoughts on this too. As someone who kind of started in the Ethereum space, because that's really all that existed. EVM stuff, right when I started, was the only thing that existed. I think part of the reason why Algorand isn't where it wants to be today as a network, as a group of people working on the same protocol, is because of network effects. I mean, Ethereum had first mover advantage. And so now we see stuff like Avalanche or Polygon, you have layer 1, layer 2s, or EVM compatible stuff, Binance Smart Chain, stuff like that. It's all EVM. And so if you want Algorand to really get to where you want it to be, not third place, if you will, you need it to be EVM compatible. Like, that's just the first step. And they're actually trying to do that with state proofs. So if you can use Algorand as a scaling solution for Ethereum-based products, that'll be huge. And the benefit to that is that you can now use the biggest, most popular development platform for products in the world in terms of Web3. You can now use that on Algorand. I also think that fundamentally there's a challenge with building application layer things be secure, but that's what we're seeing a lot of right now. So you need to build the tooling for developers to build on Algorand, and you can't expect them to switch to AVM when they're used to EVM, Algorand virtual machine to Ethereum virtual machine. Nobody wants to do that unless you start on Algorand or there's a lot of money. And that's not sustainable. So
Are you advising the foundation? I mean, that sounds like exactly what they keep talking about, are both of those things. That's awesome. And I think that actually, the fact that you said that so clearly and succinctly, it makes me feel even more so like these people know what they're doing, and they're working towards this, right? That's what they are working towards. What are your thoughts, Brian?
Yeah, so I think that like EVMs are important. One of the toughest parts about building on Algorand is like having to go through the connectivity of connecting to the network, right? Connecting your computer to the network, making sure all your keys are in place and you have the right variables. But like in the docs, like you can't really find anything to know what those variables really are or why you need them. So you sort of just have to like plug and chug away. That's sort of the tech side. I don't know that that's as important as institutional adoption. Like if you want Algorand to go from 31 to 3, like make a deal with Amazon, make a deal with ExxonMobil, get a deal with Walmart, like actually get a business behind it where there's a deal where, hey, one of these large institutions is processing, billions or trillions of dollars every year is going to use Algorand, and then that's going to all be more transactions and wallets on our network. I think it's the business side of things that really needs to be pushed forward to get Algorand where it should be. But I do think that it will, because Algorand is the best blockchain. I think it's the fastest, most secure, easiest to use. And yeah, I definitely think that Algorand is going to be there eventually. It's just sort of a matter of time before people realize like what it is. Like eventually, like the Sheebs and the Doge are going to drop off and people are going to look and see like, oh, hey, this is a layer 1 technology that allows people to send money anywhere in the world for free, essentially, right?
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Abdul? Yeah.
And I mean, maybe I'm biased. I've been looking at oracles for a long time, for the last several months now, but I've been talking to developers who are saying I was going to build on Ethereum, for example, but I just didn't because the gas fees were too high or whatever. And EVM compatibility is definitely, I think, I wouldn't call it low-hanging fruit. It's not easy, but tooling is really important. And I was listening to the kind of this roundtable of like really big investors, and they were asking them what's the best investment right now, and pretty much almost the majority of them said seed or Series A companies. I was kind of shocked. I was thinking Bitcoin or stocks or something. I was quite surprised to hear it's actually seed companies or ventures. And to me, what that means is if you can capture the developers moving forward before the technology becomes mature, that's going to be huge. And to get that innovation to come to Algorand, I think the tooling will be important. And again, the Oracle market is really immature. And if we can provide that data and have it there by the time they come, we can definitely pull people away from other chains. And we can enable people to build innovative products. So that's going to be, in my opinion, really important. And I know Carter mentioned that earlier, but tooling is going to be huge. And Brian mentioned it as well.
Yeah, tooling. You know something about tooling over there at Humble and Reach, right, Shaman?
I'm a tool. Is that what you're trying to say? I mean,
I wasn't trying to say that.
I mean, yeah, Reach. Reach is an awesome company. I'm definitely, when it comes to like the dev side and all that stuff, it goes over my head. But I know that those tools need to be in place for people to build on top of. And kind of, what I think, Brian, is what you were saying with just getting like a big deal with a large company who's, whether it be like payment processing, something along those lines. I think, right now we're so focused on building these very specific kind of blockchain like applications like DeFi suites or Oracle's. Well, I guess Oracle's falls a little bit differently, but like these DeFi suites and whatnot. I think once we really bring in products where they're not viewed as like a degen block or a blockchain DeFi type of thing, it's just naturally going on behind the scenes. That's going to be when you really see Algorand in specific take off. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I know Earth Day there might be something. We'll see. Keeping out hope that there's some sort of big announcement and it's not all fluff. But if not, hopefully some big news coming down. I know there's a lot of things being built, and there's a lot of bigger players that we might see come over to Algorand here sooner than later. But we'll see what kind of impact that makes. But I'm excited for Algorand to see its true potential.
Yeah, and you guys said it, and if you were talking about mass adoption here, right? And everywhere you look now, I mean, I think that the global conflict also, or people are appreciating the use case of things like Bitcoin and money that can't be shut down by a single entity. I think people are seeing that, but you're also hearing from companies like MasterCard and Visa and Amazon and all of these massive corporation. Facebook is rebranded to Meta. It was just recently revealed a couple days ago that they're going to charge like 50% commission on all digital assets sold. I mean, I love it. They were on their high horse against Apple a few months, like last year, saying that they charge 30%, and they come out, well, like, we got the hardware now, so we're going to charge 50%. But anyways, but you would think, well, something like Apple, like, why would, now I'm going to go into a little hopium scenario, but why wouldn't Apple use an Algorand for whatever they're going to do on blockchain? What are they going to do? Jump on Ethereum? And that doesn't make sense.
I actually kind of have a thought on that too. I think the big reason why we're not seeing massive corporate adoption is because of, and this is a little bit of a stretch, but I think it's kind of part of the issues with exploits and hacks, right? Imagine a MasterCard build something on Ethereum and then it's hacked. Like, the amount of reputation they would lose would be unbelievable. They would lose basically the whole company. Imagine your card just doesn't work for a day. That's such a reputation shock. And most of the time, when you look at blockchain protocols, you have multiple layers, right? You have the application layer, which is where virtual machines lie. So you can build programs so that the nodes that are supporting the blockchain can run the apps, the code, so that you can mess around with different storage and different tools, whatever. But I think we should, and this is a little bit of a pipe dream, but kind of my focus is to focus on firmware. And what I mean by that is focus on the blockchain protocol level, the layer 1 stuff. So one of the things that blew my mind is when I came to Algorand and I looked at the layer 1 functionality. You look at Ethereum and it takes hundreds of lines of code in a Solidity to do what's an atomic swap. For Algorand, it's 2 transactions. It's a group transaction. If one doesn't go through, the other one doesn't go through. And so just that simple protocol fix, minimizing the amount of room to mess up, essentially. And people are not good at what they do in general. Is you can be really good at something, but developers messing up even once screws over millions and billions of dollars if you're a MasterCard. So I think you need to make tooling not only that people can adopt without knowing anything, but developers that can't mess up. You can't mess up a group transaction. You can't mess up rekeying to another account. Some of these foundational products, if you want to see the massive corporate adoption, you need to make sure that they can't get screwed. I think that's kind of a barrier.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have thoughts on
that? I'll just throw a shout out to Reach, just because, why not? It's not like I work for them or anything, but that's something obviously that Reach is trying to bring to the table as well, with their coding language. Again, I'm not a dev, so I probably don't speak as well as someone else from the Reach team actually would on their behalf, but I know for like Humble Swap in specific, obviously we still had an issue. So humans are fallible. Breach functioned as it was supposed to, but someone wrote some bad code, and it functioned exactly how they wrote it to. But one thing with Reach, so like Humble Swap, I think it's like right around 500-600 lines of code to write Humble Swap. When compare that to Tiny Man, which is I think written on PyTeal, if I'm not mistaken, it's something like 2,500 lines of code. So consolidating the amount of lines of code, I would imagine that would have less of a chance to have a security issue. So I think creating that, and that might even have to do with tooling. I don't even know. But nonetheless, good job, Reach.
Yeah. And it might just needs a nice Algorand dance on TikTok. That could also do it too.
Yeah. None of us are dancing on TikTok.
Choicecoin. We have Choicecoin dances on TikTok.
Oh yeah, you guys have a whole music video.
Don't you? Yeah, we get pretty rowdy.
Choicecoin is what's the word? I don't know. Hyphy. That's 2005. I'll forgive myself for dating me.
The people's coin.
The people's coin. All right, guys. Well, I mean, look, what do we feel like? So Algorand, and that is what you were saying, Carter, is so much actually happens on the layer 1 of Algorand, and it's one of the beauties of it, right? And that's why there's so much security. But that's the whole thing, is that there's always this like decentralized blockchain thing happening in the background. And then centralized people come and they build, these things on top of it. Right. And then it's those things that seem to be getting hacked. Am I understanding this right?
Yeah. That was kind of my argument, or my idea, right? The people can mess up application code significantly easier than people can mess up blockchain protocol level code, partially because the blockchain breaks if you mess up protocol level stuff. So it's very obvious. You can roll it back. You can't fork Algorand, but you can relaunch a new version and then just tell everybody, hey, download this client, by the way. So it's a little bit of a roundabout way, but I think there's a kind of strategies you can do to mitigate potential downturn. You look at Thorchain. That's a very good example too. They use the Cosmos SDK that allows you to build protocol level blockchain applications. And whenever they have issues, they just say, everyone stop your validators, let's fix it and then relaunch. And the only hack they've had was an Ethereum side. So it can be done pretty well. And if you catch anything, you stop it, you have a lot more flexibility. So it's just a thought.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we hear what we heard today or yesterday, that North Korea was supposedly behind the Axie Infinity $600 million hack. They're saying that they said that North Korea did that. I mean, it's almost like they're like, all right, Saddam Hussein came back from the grave and he hacked Axie Infinity. Osama bin Laden.
That whole story is nuts, though. Did you hear about that? They didn't catch him for a week, and then they shorted it on chain, and then they got liquidated because nobody caught the hack for a week.
I don't know how do you lose $600 million and not notice
for a week?
Yeah, wow. That blew my mind too. I mean.
Yeah, they're saying and apparently North Korea has some pretty sophisticated hackers. So they got to get money from somewhere. I guess that's not China. So all right, well, what else have we got, guys? Like, what are you thinking?
How do we feel? The moon. Let's go, boys. I'll go to the moon.
Yes.
Hey.
That's
so let's do. I think it's going to be good. Look, I feel good. Every time, and by the way, there's got to be something coming from Argentina. Every time Silvio Macaulay talks about Argentina, he gets very excited. So I'm pretty convinced that there's an announcement coming from Argentina. Don't know what that's going to look like, but
Mexico. They're working towards making Bitcoin legal tender, and there's also rumblings. I don't know how accurate this is, so take this with a grain of salt. But Algorand and Bitcoin tokenizing, parts of Bitcoin like GoBTC to allow for something like Lightning Network Strike payments to run on Algorand.
I like that.
It's it's in the corners of Bitcoin Twitter and people I follow that are maxis, Bitcoin maxis are talking about Algorands. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
That would be really insane.
Well, aren't they already doing stuff like that in El Salvador?
With Koi banks or whatever, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Koi banks?
Yep.
Yeah. So, I think that, Algorand, the best case scenario is that it is a scaling solution for Bitcoin and Ethereum. And that is, it could theoretically save those things. I mean, I don't know, I'm sure Bitcoin maxis or whatever, what are Ethereum maxis called? Ethereum maxis?
.eth.
I'm sure they have an argument that they don't need saving, but anyways. So, all right. Any last thoughts? Let's just go around. We'll start with Abdul, then we'll go to Andrew, and then Brian, and then Carter. Any last thoughts?
Yeah, I just think it's coming. People are getting a lot more familiar with it, and now's kind of the time where a lot of the cream will start rising to the top. And I do agree, in the next 2-3 years, there will be a few chains left standing, and that's going to kind of shake away all the Wild Wild West. And so I'm excited for the next few years, and whatever applications are built today and built well, we'll probably see things working out. So we're building for the next 2-3 years. I think we're still early from the application side of things.
And then before we move on from you, is there any updates from Algoracle and how things are going over there? Anything for us to look forward to, be excited about?
Yeah, we're really pushing for a Q2 launch of the price pairs. So that's going to be exciting. We're going to start onboarding node runners on testnet in the next few weeks. So, a lot of people have signed up to be a node runner. We'll probably reach out to 20 first, then 100, then open it up. So that's going to be very exciting.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, Shaman, any final thoughts here?
I mean, no final thoughts specifically. I think we had a good conversation. I do think that we are all very early here, even still being 2022. I think we're going to see a lot of things, and for Algorand specific, I know with all the different people that I run into, there are a lot of good things on the horizon. And I think, once all the noise settles, I think Algorand is going to be the top player or one of the top players. I do believe in a multi-chain future, but I think Algorand is going to be right up there at the top. Coop, like you said, I think we'll at least have a bronze medal, something that we can be proud of. So I'm super excited to see what goes on, and we're all here for the ride. So
that's right. All right. And any updates on Humble Swap and when we might be hanging out with you guys again?
Yep. So just long story short, we, for the people who might not be familiar, we launched Humble a couple weeks ago after about 5 days. One of our partners, DFly. So big shout out to them. They were integrating us into their app, and they noticed potential vulnerability. So they brought it to our team. We kind of did all the due diligence and found out that there was, in fact, a vulnerability. There was 3 letters of the code that someone just put in wrong, basically. We are now
literally it was just they just made a mistake.
Yeah. So best way to put it, and I actually don't really know fully what happened, even in internally. They've kept it very to just a certain amount of people. But from the way they explain it, it was something along the lines. It had to do with the liquidity pools, and basically they said that it's like a calculator. So if you put in 5 times 6, you get 30. That's what they meant to put in, but instead of doing 5 times 6, they did 5 times 7, and got 35. So when they put it through the Reach compiler and all the different checks that they had, no one caught it because it was functioning as it was coded to do, but it wasn't properly set up. So nonetheless, they identified that vulnerability. They fixed it same day. But we want to do proper due diligence and keep the security as our number one priority. So we are going to go through re-audit. We have 2 audit firms. I don't really want to mention them, but they'll be re-auditing us. I'm pretty sure that's in the process now, or it's about to be. And then we'll be relaunching with some extra features. So one of the big things that we're going to have that we were planning on doing shortly after we launched was yield farming. So some people may have seen, it hasn't been super publicized yet, but we did receive a 2 million algo grant from the Aeneas funds. So we're going to be doing some pretty juicy yield farms. I definitely recommend everyone to check it out if you haven't already. So humble.sh, that's where you'll go. We'll be launching, like I said, once we get our audit back. So it's kind of hard to give a date right now. It's going to be sometime in May, but keep an eye out on our socials. If you're not in Algonauts Discord or Humble Discord, check those out. I put updates there, so you'll see them. And we're looking forward to being back online.
Cool. All right, Brian.
Yeah, just I guess first, thanks guys for your time. I really appreciate it, Coop. Really appreciated Abdul and Carter and Andrew. Like I learned a lot today and really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you. For Choice, yeah, we have Choicecoin Vote 3 coming up. We're going to vote a converter for either Solana or Ethereum. So make sure you guys get out and vote. And then we got Yieldy Governance coming up the week after that. So really excited about building out this governance platform. And yeah, just thanks again. Really appreciate your time.
Awesome. And Carter.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks again, guys. This is really fun. I look forward to doing this more in the future. I will say mass adoption is always something that we have taken a very cautious and intentional approach to. You'll know we're actually doing user experience revamps on the platform. So the app is going to look very different in about a month. And I'm really, really excited for that. Alongside some additional updates with our stakeholders. And we have a community dashboard. If you guys haven't checked that out, we have a link in our Discord. Basically, it's a DAO dashboard. Make it really easy. It was built for mayors to use to create their own, manage their own, their own city. And now we're trying to make it, where anybody can manage their own community. So I'm really excited to get more involved in the community and push this out and work alongside some really good people. So I'm really excited. We got some fun stuff coming up. And I know personally this summer is going to be a very busy one for me. So there's going to be a lot of stuff coming out. So stay tuned.
Awesome, guys. Well, I appreciate everybody taking their time to have this chat. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I found it very informative myself. And Andrew, you brought up the Aeneas grant. Watch out for my algo rant this week. I have a whole thing on the title, the name.
Yes.
So,
I won't spoil it, but I caught myself by surprise where I went. Anyways, all right, guys. Hey, I really appreciate it, and I'm happy. I hope we do this more often.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.